Welcome back. I did go to the fitness room almost an hour ago and have stayed in my gym clothes because they're comfortable and I've earned it. So we are continuing. This will be the second installment of the fifth Animorphs book, The Predator. The Animorphs are getting better acquainted with their foundling Andalite friend, Aximili Escaroth Isthil. And he would understandably like to go home. If he can reach the Andalite homeworld, he believes he may be able to encourage the Andalite military? I don't know. The Andalites to come to planet Earth more promptly. He believes that if he reports the death of War Prince Alfangor at the hands of Visser III, that might spur the Andalites or might help them understand the severity of the situation and the Yeerk invasion of planet Earth. And the Animorphs would like the same thing, so they're going to try to help him. Unfortunately, his plan involves imitating a Yeerk distress beacon in the hopes of luring a Yeerk bug fighter he can steal. So they had to take him to the mall, to Radio Shack, to get some components for faking a Yeerk distress beacon. And that is not going well for them because Andalites don't have mouths. So the mall was not the best place to take a new Andalite friend because as much as he understands the English language because the process of thought speech bridges the gaps in the meanings of words, he's never really had lips and a tongue to enunciate those words, so that's like a new toy for him. And then he gets to the mall and he orders a coffee from Starbucks, and so that blows his mind. And then he can smell a Cinnabon and needs to taste that too, and that blows his mind. So yeah, they have an out-of-control Andalite at a shopping mall. Chapter 6. "Stop!" a cop yelled. "I am ordering you to halt." But Axe wasn't interested in halting. He was panicked. A woman stepped out of the body shop holding a bag full of colorful jars. Axe plowed into her. The bag went flying. The stalks began to grow out of the top of his head. The extra eyes appeared on the ends and turned backward to watch the people chasing him. Jake and I were two of those people. We were ahead of the cops, but not by much. Fortunately, I guess the cops assumed we were just idiots running along for fun. I could hear one of the cops yelling into his walkie-talkie, "Cut him off at the east entrance." Legs began to grow from the chest of Axe's human morph, his own front legs, small at first but growing rapidly. He was slowing down as his human legs began to change. The knees were reversing direction, his spine elongated into the beginnings of a tail. That's when the screaming started. "Ah! Ah! What is it? What is it?" People were screaming and running and dropping their bags as they caught a glimpse of the nightmare creature Axe had become. Half human, half Andalite, a fluid, shifting mess of half-formed features. I couldn't blame them. I felt like screaming myself. We were getting near the exit, racing past the shoe repair place. Suddenly, Axe fell forward, tangled up in his own mutating legs. Suddenly, Axe fell forward, tangled up in his own mutating legs. He skidded down the polished marble floor. Most of the crowd had been left behind, but the mall police were still with us. "You kids get out of the way," one of them yelled at us. "This guy could be dangerous." Axe sprang up. Axe sprang up. He was much more sure of himself now that he was on his 4 Andalite hooves. The morph was almost entirely complete. His mouth was gone. His extra eyes were in place. His 2 arms and 4 legs were fully formed. Then, at the very last, the tail appeared. It, it was then that I heard the nearest mall cop, in an awed, frightened whisper, say, Andalite. I quickly turned to look at him. Only a controller would recognize an Andalite. The controller cop drew his gun from his holster. Run! I yelled at Axe. The controller stood between Axe and the door. Big mistake. The Andalite tail flashed, faster than my eyes could follow. The cop's gun went flying through the air. He clutched at a hand that was red with blood. Out the door we blew, running for our lives. Sirens. Those are real cops coming, I said, not mall rent-a-cops. Where should we go? Axe demanded, reverting to thought speak. Oh, now he wants advice. I looked around frantically. The bus was not going to be an option. The mall cops poured from the glass doors. The city police screamed toward us in their black and whites. All we could do was run, so we ran. Up rows of parked cars, 2 kids and a guy who did not belong on this planet. The grocery store, Jake yelled. What? I gasped. I was getting tired. In there, he pointed. It was the grocery store across the parking lot. It was the only way we could go. Police cars screeched to a halt all around us. Freeze! I don't think so, I said. We jetted through the big glass doors of the supermarket at a full, panicked run. I halfway expected to hear guns firing and bullets whizzing. Jake, I yelled, help me here. I had an idea for slowing down our pursuers. I grabbed a big row of parked grocery carts and shoved them back toward the doors. Jake grabbed on and helped. Then we were off and running again. With Axe skittering shakily on the slippery floor and banging into groceries. Cans of olives and tomatoes crashed behind him. Customers screamed and crashed their carts into each other. It's a monster, Mommy, it's a monster, some little kid yelled. It's just a pretend monster, his mother said. Yeah, a pretend monster, right. Then I saw our way out. It was at the end of the aisle, but I needed some time. I needed to get everyone out of our way. We couldn't have witnesses. There's a bomb! I screamed at the top of my lungs. Bomb! What? Jake demanded. There's a bomb! A bomb in the store! Run! Run! Everyone out! A bomb! What are you doing? Jake yelled. The cops have the place surrounded. There's only one way out, I snapped. I pointed. I pointed at the live lobster tank at the end of the aisle by the seafood counter. Oh no, Jake groaned. Oh yes, I grinned. The shoppers were running in a panic. Either from the supposed bomb or just from Axe. But the baskets in the doorway and the people shoving to escape slowed the cops down for a precious few moments. I had a feeling the controller cops were making sure that no real cops came in after us. They wanted us for themselves, with no human witnesses. Let's go for a swim, I said. It was a big lobster tank, fortunately. I hoisted myself up the side and climbed in. Jake was right behind me. We each grabbed a lobster and threw another one to Axe. It was not easy acquiring the lobster. It took concentration, and all I could think of was that there were an awful lot of cops outside the store, probably getting ready to rush in, and they would have guns. The lobster went limp and passive, the way animals do when you acquire them. I dropped him back in the water. We stripped off our outer clothes and shoes and stuffed them, along with the Radio Shack bag, in a trash can. Axe had already begun to morph. Axe had already begun to morph. Jake and I waited until he had shrunk a little and then hauled him into the tank with us. He was already hard, like armored, and his arms had begun to split open as well. Then I began to morph. I've been afraid a lot since we became Animorphs, but I've been afraid a lot since we became Animorphs, but I have not gotten used to it. And I can tell you, I was so scared my bones were rattling. At any second, they were going to rush in. At any moment, they were going to catch us half morphed. I looked over at Jake. His eyes were gone, replaced by little black BBs. Ew. As I watched him, 8 spindly blue insect-like legs erupted from his chest. Ah! I yelped in shock. Jake's face seemed to open up, to split open into a complex mess of valves. I think I would have thrown up seeing that, except that I also no longer had a mouth. At that very moment, I felt antennae explode from my forehead like impossibly long spears. I was shrinking as I morphed, falling down into the water, which had been around my thighs and was now around my neck. I had the terrifying sensation of knowing that all the bones inside my body were dissolving as a hard, fingernail-like crust covered me all over. My human body was melting away. My human vision was fading. I could no longer see the way a human sees, which was a good thing, because I really did not want to see what I was becoming. Chapter 7. I think I might have just started screaming and never stopped, but I no longer had a mouth. Hey, that's a Harlan Ellison short story. Sorry. I think I might have just started screaming and never stopped, but I no longer had a mouth, or throat, or vocal cords capable of making sounds. I had 4 sets of legs. I had 2 huge pincers. I could see them, kind of. They were a fractured image in my lobster eyes. I couldn't see much of the rest of me, but I could see other lobsters in the water. I was very frightened. Eat, eat, kill, and eat. The lobster brain surfaced suddenly, bubbling up within my human awareness. It had 2 thoughts: eat, eat, kill, and eat. I was getting input from my senses I couldn't begin to understand. My extraordinarily long antennae felt water temperature and water current and vibration, but I didn't know what any of it meant. Pardon me, I must have an eyelash in my eye or something. My eyes were almost useless at first. They showed fractured, incredible images with none of the colors I knew. I could see my pincers out in front of me. I could see my antennae. And behind me, I could see a curved brownish blue surface with humps and bumps on it. My body, I realized with a sickening sensation. That was my back, my hard shell. I could not look down and see my belly or the hairy swimmerette scurrying away back beneath my tail. I could not see my 8 spider-like legs, but I could feel as they propelled me suddenly scrabbling along the glass bottom of the tank. "Jake?" I called out. "Yeah, I'm here," he said. He sounded shaky, which was fine, because I was on the verge of crying, if lobsters could cry. "You okay?" "Yeah, this is not my favorite morph, though." "No," I agreed. It was good being able to talk to him. I mean, you'd think you were losing your mind otherwise. "Axe?" Jake called. I feel I am hungry. This animal wants to eat," Axe answered. Yeah, well, that's pretty normal for morphs, I said. Most animals care about food and not much else. I, I don't think lobsters are exactly geniuses. It wants to find prey, Axe said wonderingly. I know. Who'd have figured lobsters were predators? I said. It's easier to deal with a predator brain than with prey. That prey fear can be overwhelming, Jake said. I saw a lobster close by. Is that you, Jake? Wiggle your left pincer. The left pincer did not move. I realized that this lobster had a rubber band around his pincer. None of us had rubber bands. Rubber bands are not, in fact, part of the lobster DNA. I saw a lobster to my left, unbanded, and another behind him. That was the three of us. There were half a dozen rubber banded lobsters floating or just sitting. Speaking of fear, I said, can anyone see out of the tank? Just shadows, Jake said. These are pathetic eyes. Yes, even worse than your human eyes, Axe commented. This is really creepy, I said. I've never had an exoskeleton before. These pincers are most excellent, though, Axe said. I saw him opening and closing his. Axe, Jake said. Sorry. Axe, Jake said. You say you can keep track of time accurately. Start tracking. Yes, Prince Jake, Axe said. So far, 10 of your minutes have passed. That much? I was surprised. 10 minutes? The cops must have come in by now. I was thinking the same thing, Jake said. Sorry. We better wait as long as we can. Close to the full 2 hours, I said. Although I really don't want to spend any more time than I have to in this creepy morph. According to Axe, an hour had passed when it happened. I felt a strange disturbance in the water. Something large had splashed in. I sensed something above me. Before I could think or react, I felt pressure on my shell. I was rising rapidly through the water, being lifted. Jake, something has me! Sudden shock. I was out of the water. Pardon the pause for Gilgamesh scrabbling upstairs. He has arrived safely in his hayloft. Okay. Sudden shock. I was out of the water. Dryness, heat. My antennae waved wildly as I tried to understand. My eyes registered nothing but bright light and huge, indistinct shadows. Something large closed my right pincer forcibly. I could not open it. Then my left. Rubber bands. Rubber bands. I couldn't see them in this waterless environment. I was nearly blind, but I knew what had happened. Someone had picked me up and rubber banded my pincers. Sorry. Someone had picked me up and rubber banded my pincers. Then I was tumbling, sliding, rubbing against things I could tell were other lobsters. Jake, are you in this too? Yeah, but don't ask me what it means. I can't see or hear very well. Is it them? Is it controllers? Something very cold dropped on me and slithered all around my body. Ice? I felt a sensation of swinging back and forth for a while, like being on a swing. Axe? Yes, Marco, I am here too. What is happening? You got me, I said. Maybe the cops have us, maybe the controllers have us. I don't know. Let's stay in morph as long as we can, Jake said. Maybe we'll figure it out. But if the controllers do have us, the last thing we want to do is demorph. The ice seemed to be making me sleepy. Or not exactly sleepy, just slow, sluggish. I guess I kind of zoned out for a while. I didn't know for how long until I became suddenly alert. became suddenly alert as I heard Axe's drowsy voice in my head saying, "We have only 7 minutes left." That jolted me. I was not about to spend the rest of my life trapped as a lobster. "Okay, I am out of this morph. I don't care who sees," I yelled. "Agreed," Jake said. "Time's up. We have to take our chances." "At least it's warmer now," I said. I tried to look around, but my antennae felt nothing in the air, and my eyes only saw meaningless, blurry gray forms. I focused on demorphing. I wondered if I could close my human eyes when Jake started to reappear. I really did not want to watch Jake and Axe demorph. Once had been enough. I would already have nightmares for a month. "Here goes," I said. I began the change. But just then, I again felt the sensation of pressure on my shell. My pincers came free. Someone or something had removed the rubber bands. And suddenly I felt a warmth billowing up around me. Steam. Oh no. Chapter 8. No! I screamed silently. I knew where I was. I was in someone's hand, about to be dropped into a pot of boiling water. No! And no! And maybe it was because I was so desperate to scream, or maybe it was just the luck of the morph. And maybe it was because I was so desperate to scream, or maybe it was just the luck of the morph, but my human mouth was one of the first things to emerge. Small opened lips appeared in place of my lobster mouth. I didn't have normal lungs or vocal cords yet, so I couldn't make a sound, but I guess I didn't have to. I guess suddenly having lips appear on a lobster was enough to make the woman drop me. I fell. My front pincers caught the edge of the pan. Sheer dumb luck. I hung onto the edge of the pan as my tail curled up, inches above the boiling water in the pot. I grew rapidly, becoming a baby-sized creature, half covered in hard cuticle, half flesh. Human eyes grew in place of the useless stalk eyes. The antennae sucked back into my forehead. I heard a grinding sound as my spine reappeared inside me. With a desperate surge of energy, I tumbled over the side. With a desperate surge of energy, I tumbled over the side of the pan and landed flat on my shell back atop the stove. I was looking up into a stove hood. I rolled away from the heat and fell. But the fall wasn't far, because I was now the size of a toddler and more human than lobster. I was one nasty-looking kid, though, with 8 legs growing from my stomach and chest. My human hearing returned with shocking effect. Someone was screaming uncontrollably. My legs were back. I stood up. I looked around and saw a woman. Sort of pretty, except for the fact that her eyes were wide with terror and she was screaming. Sorry, I probably shouldn't do that in an apartment building. I glanced over and saw the plastic bag filled with ice. That's how she had carried us from the supermarket. Now we were in her kitchen. Jake was already mostly human, standing with one foot still in the grocery bag. The 8 legs sucked into his chest. His human eyes appears. Axe was a truly disgusting combination of andalite and lobster, but as I watched, he eliminated the last traces of crustacean. Unfortunately, this did not make the woman feel any better. "It's okay, ma'am," I said. "We're not going to hurt you." "Calm down, ma'am," Jake said. "Please calm down." I may have alarmed Gilgamesh slightly. Sorry, buddy. Calm down, ma'am, Jake said. Please calm down. Her eyes darted wildly. From me to Jake to Axe, she kept screaming. "Ah! Ah!" Look, it's okay, I said. We're going to leave. No one is going to hurt you. You, you, you lobsters, she managed to say. Yeah, it is slightly weird, I'll admit it, I said, but it's okay, because it's just a dream. Uh, uh, a dream? Yes, ma'am, just a dream, Jake said, reassuringly. I looked at Axe. Can you morph back to human yet? We need to get out of here. I can morph again, he assured me, and he started right away. We're going to leave now, Jake said. You can wake up later, okay? But I wouldn't tell anybody about this dream. The woman shook her head violently. See, it could get you in trouble with certain people. Besides, folks would just think you're crazy. She nodded with extreme conviction. Axe was almost human. Axe was almost human. We were all dressed in our slightly ridiculous morphine outfits, but they would have to do. We headed for the door. Then I caught sight of 3 more lobsters still in the bag of ice. I guess it was supposed to have been a dinner for 6. Ma'am? I asked. Do us a favor, would you, please? Take those other guys down to the beach and let them go, okay? Chapter 9. Jake and I were playing video games at the mall. I was kicking his butt. But he was distracted because he was eating. Sorry, let me try that again. The screaming lobster chapters were intense. Chapter 9. Jake and I were playing video games at the mall. I was kicking his butt, but he was distracted because he was eating. He was eating a big red bug with huge pincers. I told him not to eat it. It would upset his stomach, but he just ignored me. Then, suddenly, his stomach exploded. It just exploded outward, guts flying everywhere. 8 huge spider legs appeared, like something in him was trying to crawl out. I tried to get away, but the steam was rising. I was burning up. I tried to run, but my legs were gone, replaced by a tail that jerked and kicked. I screamed and screamed. Marco, wake up. My eyes sprang open very suddenly. Darkness. Darkness. Someone holding on to me. I was confused. Mom? I asked. Silence. Then, no. My brain snapped back into reality. I was in my room, in my own bed. My dad was sitting on the side of the bed. He looked concerned and sad. It's just me, he said. He let go of my shoulders. I felt sweaty all over, cold sweat. I guess you had a nightmare, my father said. Yeah, I said shakily. Sorry I woke you up. I wasn't asleep, he said. I glanced at my clock. The red numbers showed 3:18 a.m. I didn't have to ask why my dad was awake. He often sat awake late into the night, sometimes watching TV, sometimes just staring into space. He'd been that way since my mom died. My dad looks very different from me. For one thing, he's pretty tall. He's paler than me, too. Sorry. My dad looks very different from me. For one thing, he's pretty tall, and he's paler than me, too. and has light brown eyes. My mom was Hispanic, very dark hair and eyes. Everyone says I look like her. I know it's true, because sometimes when he's thinking about her, my dad will just glaze over and stare at me like I'm not even there, like I'm a picture of someone else. I'm okay now, I said. You should try to get some sleep. He nodded. Yeah, I'll do that. Look, Marco, you weren't dreaming about her, were you? No, Dad. Why? Because the first thing you said when you woke up was Mom. And I guess I was confused. Do you ever? Dream about her, I mean? Sometimes, I admitted. But those aren't nightmares. He almost smiled. No, I guess they wouldn't be, would they? He picked up the little framed picture of my mom that I keep on my nightstand. Then, then he, then he got that twisted look of sick grief I had seen on his face every day for the last 2 years. Part of me is mad when I see him that way. Part of me just wants to say, Dad, get it together. Sorry, Dad, get it together. Let her go. She's dead. She doesn't want us spending the rest of our lives mourning. But I never do say that. After a few minutes, he got up. He made some last remark about how I shouldn't be worried about boogeymen, and left. I knew he would sit out in the living room alone and eventually fall asleep in his chair. I lay there in the dark and tried to get the dream out of my head, but it's hard to forget a nightmare when it's true. There, it is finished. Axe held up a small mess. Axe held up a small mess of electronic components for all of us to see. It looked sort of like an exploded remote control, but smaller. It was the next day. We were out in the woods. Grouped together beneath a huge old oak tree. It was like a strange sort of picnic. Jake and Cassie had each brought hand tools for Axe to use: screwdrivers, a solder gun, a battery powered drill, a hammer, wrenches, pliers, and, of course, we had the electronic parts we had stashed in the trash can before the lobster incident. Rachel had brought sandwiches. I'd brought a 6-pack of Pepsi. It was a nice day, sunny and warm. I needed a nice day. I needed sunlight. I'd had a bad night with too little sleep. So, Axe, I said. What is it? It is a distress beacon that can broadcast on Yerk frequencies, he said with satisfaction. I know this is a Yerk frequency. We have used it to trick them before, to send false instructions. All it needs is a Z space transponder, Jake said warily, rolling his eyes at me. I think Jake may have been a bit ragged out by the lobster incident too. He seemed snappish and kind of unfocused. Not at all Jake-like. I am unfamiliar with the seemingly 90s slang term to be a bit ragged out by something, but I propose we bring that back in full force for 2023, because I think we are all a bit ragged out by something or other, right? And since we can't get a Z space transponder, it's basically useless, right? Rachel asked. Yes, totally useless without the transponder. Rachel threw up her hands. Then what exactly are we doing? Jake just shrugged. Cassie sidled up next to him and gave him a small little sideways hug. No one was supposed to notice, but right away Jake's harsh look mellowed a little. That wasn't doing anything for my bad mood, though. Well, I'm guessing that in about 2 centuries or so, humans will discover zero space for themselves and make transponders, whatever they are. But in the meantime, I'm going to have a sandwich. Tobias came drifting down through the branches and leaves of the tree, almost silent. He landed on a low branch of the oak. No one anywhere near here, he reported. Looks safe, at least as far as you guys are concerned. But there's a golden eagle about a quarter of a mile south. There's a golden eagle about a quarter of a mile south. I think I'll stay out of sight for a while and hope he goes away. Not for the first time, I realized how tough Tobias's life is. He shares all the same dangers we do, but he also has all the dangers that come from being a red-tailed hawk. Golden eagles sometimes prey on hawks. They are bigger and faster than he is. So, what's up? Tobias asked. We have a completely useless distress beacon, Rachel said. Sorry. We have a completely useless distress beacon, Rachel said. We need a transponder that probably won't be invented on this planet for another century or two. How about Chapman? Tobias said. What about Chapman? I asked. Chapman is the assistant principal at our school. He's also one of the most important controllers. I used to hate Chapman. I mean, once. Sorry. I used to hate Chapman. I mean, once I knew that he was a controller and all. But then we learned that he surrendered his freedom to the Yerks as part of a deal to keep his daughter, Melissa, safe. It's hard to hate someone for protecting their kid, even if he or she ended up being a deadly enemy. Even if he or she ended up being a deadly enemy. That's one of the terrible things about fighting the Yerks. The real enemy is just the evil slug inside a person's brain. The host is often totally innocent. We know that Chapman communicates with Visser 3, Tobias said. We know that Chapman communicates with Visser 3, Tobias said. He talks to Visser 3 on the Yerk mothership or on the Blade ship, wherever Visser 3 is. Doesn't that mean that Chapman's secret radio thing must have one of these Z space transponders? Yes, Act said instantly. If this controller speaks to any Yerk ship, he would have to have a Z space transponder. The Yerk ships are all cloaked. Cloaking technology requires a Z space deflection. Jake caught my eye. That's pretty much what I figured. I smiled, despite the fact that I had a bad feeling about the way this conversation was going. How big is the Z space thingy? Cassie asked. Axe held two of his fingers close together, indicating something the size of a pea. There would be several redundant units in any transmitter. We could take one without it being noticed, at least not right away. Rachel stood. We are not going into Chapman's house again, she said firmly. The last time we did, we almost got Melissa made into a controller. We cannot morph her cat again. Chapman is on guard now. It won't be easy this time. She realized what she'd said and added, not that it was exactly easy the first time. An historic first, I observed. Rachel saying no to a mission. Rachel's right, Jake said. We do nothing that will endanger Melissa again. So the cat is out. Also, any other plan that means major risk that Chapman will discover us. For a while, no one said anything. Finally, Axe spoke silently into our heads. I cannot ask anyone to take risks for me. You rescued me from the bottom of the ocean. You sheltered me. And my foolishness almost got Prince Jake and Marco killed yesterday. What he said surprised me a little. I guess I'd expected him to argue that we should try again to help him. What if, Cassie began. We all looked at her. Yes, Jake said. What if there was a way? What if there was a way to get into Chapman's basement room, the secret room where he keeps the transmitter, without even going through the house, with almost no chance of getting caught? I felt my heart sink. As long as it doesn't involve anything with an exoskeleton. I'd meant it as a joke, but Cassie just looked at me solemnly. What? I demanded. A lobster again? How is a lobster? No, she said. Think smaller. Much smaller. Much, much smaller. Chapter 10. Ants. That was Cassie's brilliant idea. Ants. See, ants could get into Chapman's basement, and ants could carry away the small transponder. Ants. This was what my life had come to. We ended up spending a couple of hours debating whether we should be red ants or black ants. I finally left in disgust. I didn't want to be an ant, red, black, or any other color. I saw Jake the next day in school. I had just come out of history class, where I had blown a pop quiz. I wasn't in the best mood. I was opening my locker and muttering about the Mexican-American War, and how was anyone supposed to remember the difference between that war and the Texan War of Independence? Hi, Jake said. The answer is black. The answer is black. Turns out most of the ants near Chapman's house are black. Tobias checked it out. I looked over Jake's shoulder to make sure no one was close enough to overhear. Jake, I don't want to be a bug. I've been a gorilla, an osprey, a dolphin, a seagull, a trout, of all things, a lobster, and I'm probably forgetting a few. Gorilla was fun. Dolphin was fun. Osprey was fun. Ant, not fun. Basically, bugs are a bad idea. Jake shrugged. I was a flea. That was no big thing. He grinned like he just made the world's funniest joke. Seriously, it was nothing. I couldn't see anything. I could barely hear anything, just sense vibrations. All I knew was I liked warm bodies, and whenever I got hungry, I just poked a hole in some warm skin and sucked blood. He looked a little uncomfortable. Well, it was Rachel's blood. Kind of. I mean, okay, it was cat blood, but Rachel was morphing the cat. Jake, do you even listen to yourself? I try not to think about it, he admitted. But look, we want to try and give Axe a chance to get home. And if he stays here, he's a danger to us. We've got this big and he looked around to make sure no one could hear and lowered his voice. We have this big Andalite running around Cassie's farm. What if someone sees him? Any controller is going to know what he is, and they're going to wonder why he's on Cassie's land. I nodded. Yeah, you're right. But I almost died the other day. I was almost boiled alive. I know you're the big hero type, Jake, but I'm not. I grabbed my book out of the locker, slammed the door, and headed down the hall. Jake kept pace. You know what next Sunday is? I asked him suddenly. You know what next Sunday is? I asked him suddenly. I hadn't planned on saying anything. Sunday? I don't know. What? 2 years. To the day. 2 years since my mom died. And I don't know what to do. I don't know whether I should talk to my dad about it or just let it pass. But I know one thing. This would be a really bad week for me to turn up dead. I kept walking. He didn't follow me. 2 years. She'd taken the boat out of the marina. She'd taken the boat out of the marina. She'd sailed it out into a rough sea. No one knew why. She'd never done it before. We'd always gone out together, all three of us. That night, after the high winds had blown past, they found the boat driven up onto rocks. The hull was shattered. There was no sign of my mother, except for a frayed safety rope. They never found her body. The Coast Guard guys said that was not unusual. The ocean is a big place. So is space, a voice in my head said. Somewhere very, very far away. Somewhere very, very far away. A mother and father wondered what had become of their children. For a long time, I had made up stories about how my mom had survived, maybe on a desert island or something. But I'm a realistic person, I guess. After a while, I accepted it. And after a while, Axe's parents would accept that he and his brother, Alfangor, would not be returning, that they had been lost forever in space, lost fighting to protect Earth, to help the human race, to help me. I spotted Cassie up ahead, walking with some of her friends. She smiled vaguely when she saw me. We were supposed to kind of ignore each other at school, so no one ever figured out that Jake and me and Cassie and Rachel were hanging out a lot. As I brushed past her, I muttered, "Tell Jake I'll do it." Sometimes I really hate having a conscience. Chapter 11. I wonder why these people moved, Cassie said. Maybe they didn't like living next door to a controller who is part of a conspiracy to take over the world, I said. Or else maybe they just don't like assistant principals. I could understand that. We were standing in the backyard of the house next to Chapman's. It was empty. There was a for sale sign in the front yard. It did make you kind of wonder why these people had decided to move. Not that Chapman ever acted strange. That's the big problem with controllers. You can never tell who is or who isn't one. It's convenient for us anyway, Jake said. It was night. The moon was high and full and bright, so we were hiding beneath a tree. There was a high wooden fence between us and Chapman's. Axe was just changing from his human morph back into his Andalite body. We had already acquired some ants earlier at Cassie's barn. We were getting ready to do it. I was scared. Badly scared. I guess the others were too. Everyone was talking too much, the way you do when you're nervous. Cassie was shivering like she was cold, only it was about 70 degrees out. Tobias? I asked. He was in the tree, just a few inches over my head on a low branch. How well can you see? I think I'll be able to see you as long as you stay above ground, he said. And the moonlight helps, but I'm not nearly as good at night as I am during the day. My eyes aren't much better than yours in the dark. Swell, I said. Jake glanced at his watch. It's time. It's time. We know Chapman will be at the meeting of the sharing, starting right about now. The sharing is a front organization for controllers. It's a way for controllers to get together without anyone being suspicious. Supposedly, it's just a sort of combined Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. In reality, it's a way for controllers to recruit willing hosts. Yes, believe it or not, some people choose to accept Yerk control. We didn't have to ask how Jake knew about the meeting of the sharing. Jake's brother, Tom, is one of them, a controller who's very into the sharing. You ready, Axe? Jake asked. The Andalite had to be back in Andalite form before he could morph, just like all of us had to be human before morphing into another being. Once, Cassie had tried morphing straight from one animal into another. Nothing had happened, and Cassie is the best morpher among us. I am ready, Axe said. Everyone ready? Jake asked. Yep, Rachel said. Even she sounded tense, though. There was a bad feeling hanging over this whole thing, or maybe I was just being paranoid. Okay, Jake said. Soon as we're all morphed, we head across the grass, down along the wall, underground. We find a crack or a hole and enter the basement. Yeah, nothing to it, I said. I concentrated on the ant I had acquired earlier. There wasn't much to think about, really. When I'd held the ant in my hand, it had just been this tiny dot. You could see that it had a sectioned body and legs, but that was about it. The morphing began very quickly. Whoa! Falling, falling. That was the first sensation. I was shrinking rapidly. The ground was rushing up at me. It was like one of those nightmares where you're falling and falling but never seem to hit the ground. I was still maybe a foot tall when my skin seemed to turn crisp as if it had been burned. It became hard, harder than fingernails, and glossy black. I looked over at Cassie and nearly screamed. She was farther along than me, only a foot tall, and hard shelled black all over, glistening, ri- sorry, glistening, ridged, plastic looking skin. Her legs were shriveling rapidly. So were her arms, although they had become longer to match her legs. The third set of legs was growing out of her chest. And her face? Her face was no longer human. Her head was sort of teardrop shaped. Wickedly curved mandibles were growing out of her mouth, huge, slashing, deadly looking serrated jaws. Her eyes had gone flat and dead, just black dots. Antennae, looking almost Antennae looking almost like another set of legs sprouted from her forehead. Her waist was pinched tight. Her waist was pinched tight, but her lower body swelled until it looked as big as a watermelon. I didn't want to watch because because I knew that all these same changes were happening to me. I knew it. I didn't need to think about it. I just wanted it to be over. I wanted the changes to be done. Suddenly, all around me, huge raspy spears shot up out of the ground. Grass. I was diminishing to true insect size. The rough, sharp shafts that were rising all around me were just blades of grass. They weren't growing. I was shrinking. One exploded directly under me. I tumbled end over end, and then my eyesight failed. My eyes simply stopped functioning. I was blind. Blind and falling, rolling, cartwheeling down the side of a blade of grass. Probably one more chapter tonight? Chapter 12. I was standing upright. I knew that. I had stopped falling, but I was blind. No, not completely blind. It was not just blackness, but my eyes saw no detail. I could see patches of light and areas of darkness, but they were misty and fragmented, and my ant brain was not interested in them. No, the world was not about sight anymore. It was all something else. I knew I was getting something, a sense, a feeling almost. Then I could feel my antennae waving, waving back and forth, searching, searching. No, they were smelling. My antennae were smelling. I was looking for a scent, several scents. It was not like human smell, not like Jake had described dog scent when he'd morphed his dog Homer either. That kind of scent is full of possibilities, subtleties. This was different. I was looking for just a few scents, just a few smells. I tried to prepare myself. I had been through this before. There is usually a time, a brief few seconds before the animal mind appears with all its fear and hunger and intensity. I needed to be prepared. Ants were tiny and weak. Surely their fear would be extreme. I would have to be. Then wham! The ant's mind erupted inside my own. There was no fear. None. There was no hunger. Sorry. The ant's mind erupted inside my own. There was no fear. None. There was no hunger. There was no self. No me. No me. No. My antennae swept the air. Strange. Not home. Not the colony. Enemy territory. Smell them. Smell their droppings. Smell the acrid odors they smeared along the ground to mark their boundaries. How are you guys doing? It's Tobias. How are you guys doing? Strangers, the smell of others. They would come. There would be killing. Killing. Soon. Move. Jake? Marco? Rachel? Cassie? Answer me. It's Tobias. Talk to me. I began moving. My 6 legs picked their way nimbly. I was a nearly blind insect, picking his way through a forest of giant, sawed-edged grass blades. Food. The smell of food. Find it. Take it. Return to the colony with it. Change direction instantly. Move toward the smell of dead beetle. Others around us. Us. Ours. They had the right smell. They were not the enemy. You guys are heading the wrong way. Moving faster now. Feet feeling each blade of grass. Antennae sweeping the air, searching for the scent of the enemy. Searching for the scent of the dead carcass that we had to find and return to the colony. Listen to me. You're going the wrong way. The ant mines are controlling you. Close now. The scent of food was stronger. Mandibles working. We would touch the carcass. We would judge its size. If it was too big to carry, we would hack it into smaller pieces and carry the chunks to the colony. You have to take control. You have to fight. You have to get a grip. Or enemies would come and kill. The smell of enemies was everywhere. There. We had reached the dead beetle. I scented the air. I touched it. Sorry. I scented the air. I touched it with my legs, touching again and again to learn the size. My legs? Confusion. Fight! Fight it! You have to get control! It was big. The others were with me. I opened my cutting mandibles wide and bit into the beetle, slicing through shell, biting into meat. Listen to me. You are losing. You have to fight. Fight? Suddenly, I realized that there had been something. A sound. Yes, not a smell. Not a smell. Not a feel. You are humans. You are humans. Listen to me. You are not ants. Fight it. Fight it. Yes, not a smell or a feel. In my head. Me. Marco. Ah! I screamed inside my own head. Tobias said later that it had scared him half to death. Tobias said later that it had scared him half to death. He thought I was being killed. That wasn't it at all. I was being reborn. Ha! 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 What's the matter? Tobias cried. I lost myself, I said. I was gone. I was lost. I didn't even exist. Get out of that morph, Tobias said. But I could hear the others now, snapping back into reality, becoming again, crying. What kind of creatures are these? It was Axe. He sounded terrified. Terrified! They have no self. I was lost. There was nothing to hold on to. They are not whole. They are only parts, like cells, just pieces. What kind of foul creatures are these? Listen, you guys, morph back, Tobias said. This sucks. This isn't right. Hive, Cassie said, sounding shattered. They are social insects, part of a colony, a hive. I should have guessed. I should have known. Axe is right. Each of us is only a part, like a single cell within a human body. Guys, I see other ants. They're coming your way, Tobias said. How far away? Jake asked. Can you see them up there? I'm not in the tree. I'm right here. I'm standing right over you. You're only a few inches from my right talon. I don't want to have to do this all over, Rachel said. Let's do this. Let's get it done. Are we all in control now? Jake asked. One by one, we said yes. It was only partly true. Yes, I had gained control over the ant mind, but it was still there. It was powerful in a totally new way. It was the simplicity that made it hard. The ant was a piece of a computer, just a tiny switch, a part of a much bigger creature, the colony. Guys? Cassie's voice in my head. "Hmm, if you try, you can kind of use these ant eyes. A little, anyway. If you concentrate, you can notice light and dark. It's like watching a really, really bad black and white TV that's almost all snow. And you can only see what's right in front of you, but you can almost see a picture." She she was right. I could kind of see. She was right. I could kind of see, but nothing I saw made any sense anyway. I could recognize blades of grass, but a long sloped wall that seemed about 6 feet high was a mystery to me. Hmm. Someone just ran over my talon, Tobias said. The wall was Tobias's talon. That's good. You're heading in the right direction, Tobias said. You're coming up on the fence. Hmm. If there was a fence, you couldn't prove it by me. I saw nothing. The bottom of the fence must have been 7 or 8 body lengths above me. Irrelevant. Hmm. I don't want to go into Chapman's yard, Tobias said. It would look fishy if anyone saw. Just keep going the same direction. We did. I barreled through a forest of grass. Then, very suddenly, it ended. We were out of the grass and racing across a moonscape of boulders, each the size of my head. In my ant brain, the alarm bells were still ringing. Enemies, enemies, their scent was everywhere. But it was not fear I felt from the ant brain. It was not capable of emotion, or anything like emotion. Hmm. It simply, sorry, it was not capable of emotion, or anything even like emotion. It simply knew that there were enemies close by, and it knew that it would come down, sooner or later, to kill or be killed. All right, I will leave it there at Lucky Chapter 13 for tonight, and I will hope to see some of you again next week. Good night.